Haya. Tinaga siyazi ukuthi ke sine inkinga. So let's dive into this and chat to Mr. Mohammed, fly like a butterfly, sting like a bee, Managing Director of iOS Specialist Worldwide Industrial and Systems Engineers.
Singapore success.
Very much impressive.
Mohammed, good afternoon. Thank you for making time.
Good afternoon, Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me.
Always a pleasure.
Lovely.
Well, let's get straight into it. How did ISO 9001 or 9001 and ISO 37001 contribute to Singapore's success? And why are these standards so vital for combating corruption?
I think it's a very good question. So, look, these international standards have been there for a significantly long time. What the Singaporean government did was they looked at these best practice standards that certainly are done at a national level and are also elevated up to an international level. Now, there's a whole hierarchy of how it goes over from it being a national standard into an international standard. But what Singapore did was they looked at these requirements standards like quality or anti-bribery standards. And in those standards, it directs you in terms of what you need to do for your policy development, what contents go into the policy, your procedural development, and how you can hold leadership accountable, which is a key word. So they adopted these particular standards into their ministerial framework, and they then made sure that when it came to debate within Parliament, they all were within one uniform target and focus in terms of making sure the value of the economy of the country and the service delivery is what can be achieved. Then there's a certain example that was made where there was a particular minister that unfortunately used public sector money to be able to fund his own particular, travel. This is in Singapore. And the late Prime Minister then held the person accountable by putting him in life imprisonment because of these particular policies that were established. So he set the example early and made it very, very prevalent on the accountability of these policies and what the consequences are. And thus, this is the benchmark they've set in their particular country.
Let's look at South Africa now, Mohammed. I mean, what challenges might we face when implementing the anti-corruption measures, and also what strategies could be, employed to address these challenges?
Okay, so it is challenging. So I want to take you through what transparencyinternational.org do, and then I'm going to tell you where South Africa is lying in this whole hierarchy. So transparencyinternational.org work with research companies. Every year, they independently get 3 different research companies to be able to do research on the measurement of corruption and its relevant index. Now, in this index measurement, they look at bribery, diversion of public funds, nepotism, state capture, all of these kind of things that we are prevalent to. So based on the statistics, you will see, as mentioned earlier, that the least corrupt country out of 180 countries is Denmark. So Denmark is holding the flagship of being the least corrupt. Singapore is sitting at 5. Now the question is, where is South Africa out of 180 countries? You might be asking, why is it 180 and not a total of 196? If there's not enough data to publish to justify that this country is, the transparency index can be viable, then they do not include them. So South Africa, right now, we are sitting quite high. So in the ranking, we're sitting at 83. So out of 180 countries, we're sitting at 83. That's number 83. And what's sad is 2 years ago, we were actually much better. We were 63. So in the last 2 years, we've dropped 20 spaces in terms of becoming more corrupt. So that's the particular, you could say the perspective of what the index is telling us. Now, the challenges we have is basically our top management, if you want to call it as such in an organization, is our leadership. And that is from exactly the ministerial level, presidential level, DG level, DDG level. They firstly need to understand this. If you don't understand this, there's a lot of programs on Netflix like why BlackBerry fell away, why Nokia fell away, and today the market is captured by Apple or by particular Samsung. And in the same instance, that's exactly where we are. We're not understanding the importance of policy development, foreign policies, procedural development, and understanding the benefits of the country. So change management is the fundamental bottleneck right now. And accepting change management is a very difficult thing. And then accountability. We're not willing to take accountability because the consequences are not that dire. If you make the consequences significant and accountability is taken into account with good policies in place, trust me, our country is headed in the right direction.
Oh man, yeah, 83. That is just sad, eh? But let's look at Singapore, Mr. Ali. I mean, how has Singapore's fight against corruption impacted its economic growth and development, and maybe what potential economic benefits could South Africa see from similar efforts?
Yeah, look, it's a good question, so you'll see that, a lot of times the South African government themselves are trying to learn from what these countries have done. You'll see a lot of our particular ministers who are doing MBA programs. They're doing programs where they're traveling to Singapore. They're traveling to Hong Kong, which is another country that's improved significantly, or the United Arab Emirates, and are looking at what exactly these leadership frameworks entail. And you'll see a fundamental, commonality between all of them. And this is establishing standards. So that is the first step. We all need to agree that there's a standard or a framework. Yes, we have a governance framework in South Africa called King 4. It's very well presented, but the problem is the execution of that framework, meaning the actual policy development, the actual execution of it, and then knowing what the consequences are. We haven't derivatively documented it as such and published it where Parliament can all agree. We need to get that understanding clearly done. This has helped Singapore not only on the fact of being able to create good governance, but it's allowed their foreign policy and international market to thrive. Just think about this. Look at our leadership. How many of our leadership are sending their children to public schools? Have they themselves gone to Home Affairs without any privileged point where they have seen the challenges when it comes to applying for an ID or getting the ID or a passport? Now, there are standards for, you've always heard in Home Affairs the systems are down, but there are standards for business continuity. If your systems are down on-prem or on the cloud, what's your plan B, plan C? Have you simulated it? Can you be able to still deliver? These are what the private sectors are doing. Why is it that the public sector are unable to do this? Is it change? Is it accountability? And if you implement this, look at the countries that we are benchmarking against. That's where value has come in and improved the economic growth.
But surely there are factors that South Africa can focus on to effectively combat corruption. Maybe what are the key ones? What are those key factors that we can focus on?
So if I have to look at it, there's our judicial system in terms of how we look at one of the countries in Africa. So let's look at that. Let's look at what the data says. So in Africa, we're trying to identify which ones are the least corrupt. So right now we've got Seychelles that's sitting at number 20, and we've got Botswana that's sitting at number 30. So these are the two countries in Africa that basically have significantly good governance and are denoted as not corrupt. Now, what have they done? So on their judicial system, in Botswana, as you would know, there's the death penalty. If there's any rape or any murder done, within 6 months, they don't waste taxpayers' money. If you're regarded as guilty, they will hang you. The consequences of any either significant crime that's committed, there's penalties that are significant on the individual, which prevents and is reluctant to people to take advantage of. I think that's the first point of entry we need to look at before we go into looking at how we can improve service delivery. I think once those, and it's a difficult discussion to have because, post or pre-up 1994, we obviously, there was very strong laws and legislations put, but if we don't get that sorted out first, we can't adopt good industry best practice. That's where the first point of entry would be before we look at all the other service delivery elements. And I think all the ministers need to look at themselves and say, let us go and experience what our division is giving us, and without any privileges. And they themselves will be able to see. And you ask the questions, why are you not sending your child to a public school? Because your public school should be at that level better than the private school, as other countries like Australia are.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, before we run out of time, Mr. Ali, let me ask you this very quickly.
We have a minute.
maybe how long will it take for South Africa to see substantial improvements in corruption levels if it follows Singapore's model?
Yeah, so I mean, this is a tough point, right? So look, from what I've seen in the stats and the data, and I'm busy trying to write a paper around this, the Edward Deming, one of the forefathers of standardizations and, the gurus of this had said it would take 3 generations to see the benefits. So you have to start somewhere. So unfortunately, we are not going to see it. Neither will our children or our grandchildren. Perhaps our great-grandchildren will see the benefits of what it is that we established today. So we've got a long way to go. So it's not a quick fix, unfortunately. We have to be ready for this long journey and firstly accept change and accountability before we even look at moving up the scale of reducing our index on corruption.
Absolutely, Mohammed. Thank you so much. Very insightful. Can we get a website? Maybe we can get more information on this.
Yeah, sure. Look, I mean, the website that I will recommend for you to have a look at is www.transparency.org. So that's transparency.org. I think that's a very important website to go and look at the stats of where we stand as South Africa, where other African countries stand. And then you can definitely look at our website called WWISE. So it's Worldwide Industrial and Systems Engineers, WWISE.co.za, where you can look at the implementation of anti-bribery standards and look at videos of the benefits and the case studies of which sectors in South Africa right now, public and private, are implementing and have seen statistical growth in terms of the improvement with AG audit findings.
All right. Mohammed, thank
Mr.
you.
Ali, always a pleasure. Thank you very much for your time.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Jozi. Enjoy the rest of the day.
You too. Thank you. All right. Key Managing Director, ISO Specialist, Worldwide Industrial and Systems Engineers.
Very quickly, should all hijacked and unsafe building in Johannesburg CBD be demolished?
Yes.